essentially like you could tell these guys brought their own costumes, like super low budget, 1958 or 7 or something like that. And like there's just ridiculous detail in the characters' eyes and stuff. Welcome back, everybody. We are on our second to last, although if you have been paying attention, we forgot that there was an extra week this month. So we initially this was going to be our last month of the month, but right now it's, if we're being realistic, it is the second to last, and
there's a technical special hidden episode this month.
Yeah, it's the Mike didn't look at the calendar and just assumed there was 4 weeks schedule.
I mean, I could have done it too, but I didn't.
Yeah, no, it's not a big deal. Nobody's going to care. So we're talking about Oppenheimer today, which you may be more familiar with it as Barbenheimer, as one half of Barbenheimer. But yeah, no, this is the 2023, right?
Or 23.
23. Best Picture winner, Best Cinematography winner. Again, we're doing Best Cinematography, Best Picture all month long.
For pre-production on this, first of all, audience, our theme for this episode is shooting as practically as possible. And when Mike and I discussed this as our focus for this episode, I'm becoming more of a film understander instead of just a film enjoyer. And I said, so what does that mean? And you described it as doing as much work with camera, with lighting, with actors, with scenery, so that you don't need to do a lot of VFX and compositing and green screen and things of that nature. So it's sort of in the line of our Italian month films where like they didn't have VFX, or somewhat the Lawrence of Arabia and The Last Emperor, which we did earlier this month, where those were in the 70s and they didn't have the VFX. So this is kind of like it's almost like a vintage blending of the two together, because there is VFX in this film. It's just not that many in comparison.
Right. And I think going back to last week for a second with Titanic. Titanic was, like we mentioned at the time, like it was a masterclass in VFX. And, and now we're looking at it 27 years later, 28 years later. It's not looking as good, those effects. And pretty quickly on in the VFX process, certain filmmakers recognized that was going to be a problem. And so if you fast forward from Titanic to 2 or 3 years later, maybe it was closer to 5 years later, Lord of the Rings. Obviously, there's a lot of CGI in Lord of the Rings, but there's a lot of VFX and a lot of practical shooting. So Gandalf and the Hobbits, Gandalf and the Hobbits, we would shoot with special lenses so that they would look they'd be in the same focal distance, while one is, my hands are the same size, right? But imagine if these were in perfect focus, both of them. That's essentially what they were doing there. And so there's lots of things like that. This movie, I mean, Christopher Nolan is a big proponent of doing everything practical that is possible. Not to say he had, obviously if you've seen Inception, some of that had to have been digitally done. He didn't have an actual city, fold up over.
I love that. I love that film. Speaking of Leonardo DiCaprio films, I love that film. So Nolan took a subject that could have been just buried face deep in CGI, but made it something tactile in Oppenheimer. So
I actually
not only equipment, but just like old school methods of just good film craft, good shooting.
So I personally think that Oppenheimer lends itself to being shot practically. in almost every way.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Because there's obviously there's some things that could have been easier, like they shooting in Santa Fe. Is it Santa Fe, or am I screwing up where the town is that they set up for this? It was New Mexico. Like there are like things there where like shooting practical, like, you could do sets, and I'm sure in some cases there were sets, but they probably went on location quite a bit too to shoot.
So it
But like
looks
the
like New
only
Mexico, Los
yeah,
Angeles, New Jersey,
Los
Cambridgeshire, and
Alamo, is
Switzerland.
that what it?
Well, yeah, New
Yeah,
Mexico is probably where the Los Alamos was
yeah,
built
Los
out,
Alamos. Yeah,
and then
yeah,
Switzerland for some of the other shots.
right. So like when you're talking about practical, so like all of that lends itself to practicality,
It
and
does.
but this is a fairly large scale movie for what it is,
Hmm.
because you have a huge cast, you have all these things, and I don't know if you remember, but prior to the movie coming out, there was all this speculation because Christopher Nolan had talked about, I'm going to shoot as practically as possible, and people were saying that the nuclear blast or the atomic bomb testing scene was going to blow people's minds, and it was like, what is he going to do to make an atomic bomb,
It
like
was.
practically. And
Um, let me admit, it was with how you just built it up. It was underwhelming because it wasn't
sure.
like it like again, the hype was crazy, but what I liked about the actual test blast was how like sound was worked into it.
Hmm.
Like it
So
going dead silent
yep.
and then hearing the shock after. Like that was freaking cool in
Yeah,
comparison to just being visually exciting.
right. I think that what they did really well in that part was this, and we'll get to that later. But like so that was the big thing with practicality here, is that
Mhm.
like how we do that. Now, I also mentioned to you when we were talking about doing this movie that opening shot, and maybe it's not the exact opening shot, but the like whirring of, like, it's almost a microscopic shot of an atom whirring or whatever,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
and like that's something that Nolan did a lot of work with on Interstellar with that type of um uh,
By the way,
real.
with the same cinematographer.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
um so there's a lot of that style of like, let's shoot this impractical thing practically. So like with for a lot of times with space stuff, they'll go get a fish tank and they'll fill it with whatever water, and they'll put black behind it, and then they'll drop things in so that it looks like nebulas, and there's
Hmm.
things like color drops and stuff that on top of the black. There's a lot of that kind of thing that you're able to do for practical, and they did it to with Inception. They did it to, or not, sorry, with Interstellar.
Interstellar.
They did it to this massive scale, which I think helped prep him for going into this film. And all of a sudden, it's like there's only a couple of those shots, but they're like, we're going to use micro photography, and we're going to use black backgrounds, and to me, as far as I could tell, that could have been a real electron or whatever, like it was really interesting looking. It was still, when we talk about practical filmmaking, especially when you go to before that was, when that was the only option,
Yeah, yeah.
there was a level of the glass, the lenses and the glass, and the ability to get like a pristine, ridiculous shot was very difficult. So like you look at like, sorry, best cinema, even if you go back to to The Last Emperor, which is 1987, right?
Hmm.
Last Emperor is a beautifully shot movie, but there is, I mean, like, there is none
There's
of even
there's some optic limitations, and you
the
can tell it.
webcam. This webcam, which is a piece of crap webcam, has like a better definition. Now, sometimes definition can be a problem. That's why you have mist filters and things to give it a little bit of a softness. But
Yeah.
like, like if I get in close, I'm not gonna for the viewer's sake, but if I got in close, you can get detail of which hairs are gray and which hairs are
Hmm.
black, and if
Hmm.
you do that with a good camera and good lenses, you can make a really interesting, pristine picture.
Yeah.
And that was not the case. Even to some extent, Titanic doesn't even do that, right? But when you get into
No.
these filmmaking over the last 25 years or so, uh, has been increasing that, right? Now, not to say that it didn't exist before. If you're here from my other podcast, The Completionists, we talked about how Kubrick was able to get a lot of that stuff, but he was the only one doing it decades before it was being done, with like
Yeah.
details in like his very first feature film. It was like 80 minutes or 75 minutes or something. Uh, and I'm forgetting the name of that specific one. There's like details in the eye, and I'm like, how did a guy with just like a camera in the woods, essentially, like, you could tell these guys brought their own costumes, like super low budget, 1958 or 7 or something like that, and like there's just ridiculous detail in the characters' eyes and stuff. And so, like, was it doable? Yes. Were people doing it? Not really. And part of that is, it's an attention detail photography wise. I mean, Kubrick was a photographer first, and then
You
a
talking about Flying Padre?
no, that's not a short. That's not a feature. That's like a
Fear and
short
Desire.
film. Fear and Desire. If you watch Fear and Desire now, it is not a good movie. But some of the cinematography, I'm like, I literally was like, how did they accomplish that in
Yeah.
1954 or 5 or whatever year that
52.
was? Was that 52? Okay,
Even
yeah.
older
I
than you
mean,
thought, 52.
yeah.
So yeah, and you're right. Back then, it was the only method. Back then, the quality of the optics, the glass itself, and the coatings on them, like that
Right.
greatly changes it. And even now, like you mentioned, your webcam or the one I'm using here, there are multiple groups of optics into
Mm-hmm.
something smashed this thin, right?
Yeah.
So and obviously sensor sizes when we're talking about shooting to digital. So
Right.
with the Titanic example, it was intentional that Cameron was shooting softer
Mm-hmm.
because they weren't pulling as close on faces. And then
Right.
with
Right.
Kubrick, it was lots of attention and equipment. With Oppenheimer, it's a blend of both, because
Right.
it's not that Nolan didn't have money to use, and he did,
Yeah.
but it was more that he approached it as filmcraft. He approached it
Sure.
as shooting practically, and it's not just explosions. Like
Right.
in this situation, it means using the real locations and textures,
Right.
the real up close faces, and real blocking that carried the drama of this film through to the end. And like I was mentioning earlier, like the explosion, the way sound was even used, right?
The reason why I bring it up is because I think that we mentally have a lot of, especially as a uh, non filmmaker, cinema going audience,
Mhm.
have a lot of things probably compartmentalized subconsciously that we don't mention. So this is a film. This is made on film. This is not made on digital. And I think that because we've gotten, a lot of the accessibility of these technologies, as well as the accessibility of certain techniques, have kind of grown at the same time as CGI, as digital, then 4K, high HD, then 4K, and all that has kind of grown at the same time. People probably associate those things, and Christopher Nolan is a kind of a cool example of, he refuses to go digital.
Mhm.
I'm sure he's used some CGI here and there, but he wants to go as practical as possible. And so, like, when you see, one of the things, to give everybody in the audience an example of what I'm talking about when I talk about some of this stuff, is like, if you go watch any movie from the 1950s, basically any movie that's not Stanley Kubrick, you're talking about medium. You're talking about two shots where, like, I'm here. Okay, turn the other way. From my perspective. Oh no, because I'm gonna be on this side of the screen. So like you get two people in a lot of shots. It's like a play where
Yeah.
you've got one character and then another character and then the thing. When you get into the closer up shots, you're like a close up in 1950 is this framing, right? Like
Hmm.
this essentially.
Chest up. Yeah, pretty much.
With this increase of better optics and things, we've also been able to people have changed the perspective on how they do. So we get a lot of extreme close-ups. Like basically probably before 2005, did you see anything that was this? That was, like you're seeing this part of
Not
someone's face? I
No,
have a
not really. And only horror movies in the 50s were
right,
doing that when they would pull super close in, but
right,
it was for dramatic effect.
right.
And it was also, to be honest, to frame out some of the things that they didn't want to show you, like
Sure.
bad makeup effects or
Yeah.
bad special effects or something. So pulling him that tight
Yeah.
gave someone like Hitchcock the ability
Right.
to obfuscate what was the hell outside
So
of the camera's field of view.
that's a great point. You a lot of times when we saw things before it was to be reductive in the sense of
Yeah.
like we're reducing what we can't, even though it wasn't on purpose, the fact that we don't see the shark in Jaws very much because the thing wasn't working, it gives it an effect that's really great, right?
Yeah.
The fact
Yeah.
that like there's this dread coming, right, of the shark in Jaws because we don't see it. Even though it was a practicality effect. Same thing with horror movies back then. Now we are able to do it as like a more additive thing where we're saying, okay, um,
Now it's artistic
Killian
use
Killian
instead
Murphy,
of instead
yeah,
of
Killian Murphy wants us to
necessary.
see. Killian Murphy wants us to see all the acting he's doing in his eyes and
Mhm.
the tears, or the like fear, or like the there's so much more going on that so we're not cutting in to reduce everything out of frame. We're cutting into focus, right?
Those
To and
shots when they're in the bunker
Yeah,
and they pull
yeah,
tight in his eyes while when he would take down the binoculars or be looking through
hmm
that slot, like that set me.
hmm
Those shots, you're right. There is speaking volumes in the silence, acting with just his
hmm
facial expressions. And
I
yeah,
mean,
your whole thing was shot on IMAX and Ariflex on 35 and 65. Like
yeah,
that's the whole film.
yeah,
You and I could go buy an Ariflex Mini if we want to do. Like they're not in the grand scheme of things, they're hardly a red.
right.
They're hardly a high end black magic rig. Like these are again him using this as
Some
often
of those
filmmakers.
Ariflex
Oh,
film cameras are expensive, though.
okay, some the minis are not.
I'm
So
sure what he was shooting on was probably
he
50 to
was
60K cameras at
using.
least.
I think the Ariflex was a 435. Yeah, Ariflex 435 is what he shot on, and that is a 4 pound rig that costs approximately $12,000, and that's right
Yeah,
now. So obviously, it was
yeah.
is going to be more in the future and a little less back then. So Nolan choosing to shoot this way as practical as possible, he doesn't see it as a limitation. He sees it as probably forcing his hand to be creative
hmm
because I could see someone like Nolan and Hoyt van Hoytema, which I'm probably butchering your name. Sorry, you're Scandinavian. Um, like this wasn't a limiting factor
No.
it wasn't a limiting factor on I want to be limited. It was maybe a situation that both of these people, if they shot Digi, they'd go nuts with it because they are such film nerds. Like
I
it
think
was almost like an intentionally limiting factor.
Yeah. So like personally, I'm not a anti-digital
I'm not even.
filmmaker.
No.
I do think that there is a lot of really cool stuff about film, but where I do think that my snobbery comes into play is in photography. Again, not anti-digital, but I think that like when you had to when we're that age, right, where we grew up with point and shoot, with like film point and shoots
Disposable
or
film cameras at
disposables,
every
right?
wedding. Yep.
We grew up with all of that kind of stuff. But by the time we were like getting in, like right into college or even a little bit before that, digital photography was becoming an option. So
Yeah.
we're not like so far removed, right? And what I've noticed, what I think, and as far as photography, and this was even pre-social media, but what is that like when I would go, if I had because I took actual film classes with film cameras, right?
Mm-hmm.
35 millimeter cameras. You had, I forget, what is it, like 26 shots on a roll or something like that.
24 was standard, 26 was
24.
extended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'd have like certain amount, you'd have that many shots, and you're like, okay, well, you're going to take your time, you're going to set it up, you're going to think about it, you're going to get, and then when you got those 24 shots back after you developed your film, however you did that, whether it was CVS or it was going into a dark room, and you would come back and you'd say, okay, well, out of those 24, I got 9 really cool pictures, and I
Exactly.
missed
Like,
the mark on the other 15.
that anxiety
Digital,
of not shooting well
with digital, it's like,
is part
okay,
of it.
I went out for an hour, I took 400 pictures, and I got
Yeah.
three good ones. And
Right.
I will also say that I think because of the selfie, I mean, I'm going to go on a boomer rant here for a second. Because of the selfies becoming a big deal, and because of digital's ability to take, I think that people don't understand what good photography is anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I see people posting, like, I'm not saying that there aren't good photographers and that there aren't some people, but I think
I
there's a
see
lot
some
more.
bad framed, bad
Oh yeah,
focused, bad. Just it's atrocious. Some of the stuff people
yeah,
will post because, like you mentioned, some of these folks never used analog, so the
yeah,
setup wasn't open camera app tap screen
right.
to get the color to balance. Like, no, there was exposure, there was
Well,
f-stop, there was zoom. Well, not even zoom. Sorry, there was focal length. Like, there was so many other
right.
things that doesn't make your photo better, but
No,
all of those helped
they
someone like
make you
us or
better.
Nolan,
Yeah,
us or Christopher Nolan, a better shooter. Just
right.
period, a better photographer.
Yeah, it drives me crazy because like so my sister-in-law is this pisses me off slightly. She's just one of the most naturally talented photographers I've ever met, and she's not a professional. She just like she does spend time working on
She
it,
has
like,
visual understanding of her subject and shoots it
like
well.
and she shoots digitally completely. 90% of her stuff, the last 10 years, probably all of her stuff is on a phone, not on a camera. She just does it well, right? Because there's something in her brain that understands it. And so like she is the rare exception to the digital rule, because while I'm sure she did have access to film cameras and stuff, like, because she's 7 years younger than me, right? So she's quite a bit younger. So she's just that much more. But I see other people, and I'm like, why did you post that? Did you think that was a good picture? And I'm
Yeah,
like, like, I am a big fan of, like, I don't think that like portraits are great usually. I think candids are way better. But then
100. Oh my god, 100%.
I'll see someone who took like a candid, and I'm like, why did you I don't think it needs to be flattering to the subject to be good, like,
No, but at least,
but
be framed well and look good.
I want to use my
Like,
father-in-law as an example of, so my father-in-law obviously is a generation before us, and does he get some good ones? Yes. Does he get some really bad ones? I'm like, yeah, like, and then he puts them to my aura frame, and I'll be like, why do I want a picture of my nephew taking off his football helmet, sweaty, like I have that picture on my aura frame. So I'm like, why is that a picture you took and kept and
it's my
uploaded?
grandchild. It's my grandkids. It's my grandkids. Yeah,
No, and
it's what I think with that generation, it is so much more about who is in the photo or what is in the
yeah,
photo than the photo, because for them, that's the only way you capture a memory.
yeah,
Is to take a photo is the only way you capture a memory. Now, I am so much a candid only person. My wife, audience, slid into my DMs on Instagram. That's how she and I met. And for the lack of like selfies or pictures of my face that my Instagram had, I am surprised that she saw my face at all because I loathe face on posed photos. They are
Mm-hmm.
silly. They don't capture any emotion. They don't capture any action. It is the worst version of still life that exists. So,
I
hold on.
Yeah.
So I will go out of my way to not shoot people's faces straight on. And
Mm-hmm.
Nolan did the same.
Mm-hmm.
So many shots in this film are not square on, we're talking. Like, there's not even that many second person style shots where you're in the body of who they're speaking to. There's barely any of those. So
Mm-hmm.
many of it is that classic filmmaking third person observer kind of
Yeah.
view, like you're there with them. And I loved how it put me emotionally in the scenes because
Yeah.
it wasn't, I was watching two people have a conversation as a fly on the wall or someone in the room, not we were setting up a two shot. They are facing the camera. This is structured. Dirt, 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 dirt. Like it didn't feel like that. The way that this was shot as practical as possible for someone that is like Christopher Nolan is the fountain pen of theater and cinema. I love fountain pens. I have atrocious handwriting, but I love fountain pens
Mm-hmm.
because of the pomp and circumstance that is surrounding their usage. Like the fact that I have to have special paper, like here's my notebook, the fact that I have special pens that write on a special paper, the fact that I have to fill my pens. Like there's so much of this that is just part of the mystique of using what for 2023 is an ancient media or medium, I should say. Christopher Nolan went out of his way to just be pedantic is not the right word, to be that obstinate there, to
Yeah.
be that obstinate to use a limiting to some, but to him empowering medium to shoot this film, and also working with Hoyt that he has worked with before on. Well, he's doing the Odyssey with him. Nope, Tenant, the same Interstellar as you mentioned. This Hoyt also did Spectre. Hoyt did Her. This is all cinematography credits, and he did The Girl and Let the Right One In. So there are so many of these, even in different styles, that have some of the same limitations when he's worked with Nolan. But then in the case of other films like The Odyssey, that's also going to be directed by Christopher Nolan, which means you know that's on celluloid. So that is definitely something I'm excited about. Let me tell you, I am excited about The Odyssey. I want you to take a little bit of lead on editing because
Sure.
I'm learning what it means in the sense of a film. Like I know there's like color correction and color grading; those are two different things. One's the science,
Right.
one's the art. Editing is a necessity for films, but on our special
Right.
episode for our Oscars recap, where Kim was talking about like how it is edited, that is just gone on me. I don't understand it the same way you all do. So
Okay.
describe editing and celluloid and shot practically like for you in this film.
Okay. Well, again, editing in as far as our show format does not mean actual editing. It's
I
just
know,
the
I know,
okay.
I
I just
know,
want to make
but
sure.
it's an opportunity for you to not only describe
So
more to me how it's done, but also in the sense of this film.
editing does a few things, and I will be honest and say editing within this film wasn't my focus, so that I don't know that I paid enough attention. But to give you an idea of what editing can achieve, so editing obviously affects the macro, right? Like this has a 3 hour whatever runtime,
Mhm.
and so editing is why it has that, right? Because we cut scenes and stuff. We cut scenes, we cut storylines if they don't work, whatever. Editing can also, sometimes in editing, you've written the script out and you're saying, okay, it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you get to editing and you're like, oh, but like C doesn't really like make much sense before D in this case. So what if we move C to after D? And that's when you look at like B, A storylines and B storylines, you have a little bit of that, right? In this case, those moments would probably be like you'd have the all the stuff going on in Los Alamos is A, and then the stuff going on with, is his wife's name Kitty? Am I
I
right
think
about that?
so.
The stuff going on with Kitty is B. The stuff going on
Kitty,
with
yeah.
Florence Pugh is a B story. And so, like, if
How
A
about
story,
Leslie? The stuff going on with Leslie is definitely a story arc, and Louis
that's
Strauss.
yeah. But my point being like so like the Los Alamos, the actual nuclear testing site stuff, that probably needs to stay in that same linear, like that probably needs to go A B C D E F G. But then you got the Kitty stuff is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and so you might be able to put one in between A and B, or you could put one in between B and C. And so like that's where you can play around too. Is like where do we entertain? So that's the macro side of it, right? Like how long is the movie? What order do the scenes go in? But then you also have editing in the sense of, okay, how do we cut this in ways that maximize effect? So like you get those S cuts where
Okay.
before the next scene visually starts, the audio trails over, or vice versa. Before it ends visually, and then you hear the audio go on for a second longer into the next scene, or and those are good because they either like a lot of times they convey a natural conclusion. So you're like, well, I wouldn't have gone for that if I were you. I'd have gone to do this. And so I'd have gone to do this might be over him going to do that, right? So you'd have like that's like a natural cause and effect kind of editing style.
Because it
That
just has
is
to be there. One thing led to another.
right.
Practical.
So yeah, so you get the two visual tracks, and then you have the audio track kind of goes over, and it helps tie the two things together. And it also is kind of like it's kind of the dot dot dot, like, so like first we steal the underwear, step 2, step 3, profit.
Profit.
So so we get that. But then also what editing can do is it can kind of create a rhythm in scenes and a style in scenes. So like when you work with cinematography and blocking, and we're going to talk about a lot of blocking and stuff next week, blocking and shot movements and stuff because of our movie next week. But when you start talking about blocking and how those things cut, so you're going to shoot coverage to have typically, the like typical is you get the two shots so you can see how the two people are together. You got like an over the shoulder shot, those reverse shot reverse shot, so you can see from my perspective, I can see from your perspective. And then you might throw in like a close up, or there's other random things. And editing will allow us to change the dynamic in the scene. So the example that I loved, and this is all one shot, in Indiana Jones, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, there is the scene where him and his friend, the other professor that's like the gets him the gigs, right? Like Indy. They are meeting the two government guys in the school's like auditorium, and you see Indy sit down, and you see the guys like looking over, and it can convey who is in charge of the conversation, and then they sit down to listen to Indy. And you could do that with cutting as well. So you can say like Taxi Driver. If you watch Taxi Driver, the way that they're cutting in almost every scene that Travis Bickle is with anybody, it's them and then Travis Bickle, and they're not in frame together because Travis is isolated. So you're
Okay.
creating that dynamic. So you can use editing, and again, it's in conjunction with cinematography, with blocking, with all of that, but you can use editing to convey these things. And so like maybe we're letting something linger on a character who is we're letting that it linger to like show that they are in command, and then we cut just for a quick like snippet of a reaction because the other person is subservient or on the back foot or whatever
Or
in the
being shot from
conversation.
above.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff too, but the pacing and the cadence of that editing can also it can lead us as an audience. Well, obviously, I'm listening to the person who's on screen, who's talking, and then cut to, and there's a lot of reaction shots that aren't dialogue in this movie. Um, the nuclear blast is, or the atomic testing. Like, there's so many interesting shots in that, right?
Yeah.
But like that is how editing can work. Is editing you can show the thing, or you can show the reaction to the thing, and I think that's
We kind of
where
got both.
right. But when we talk about the actual atomic blast in this, which what I when I mentioned earlier that people were like, how is it going to be shown? And that is something, and I started to say that something they got right was this is the thing that they got right. They used the story so that we don't see the atomic blast, but we see the response and the reaction and the preparation to it. We see the guys lathering up the like zinc or sunscreen, or I mean, it was like super duper level, right? It wasn't the shit you and I used to go to the beach for 20 minutes. This was like, we don't know what the fuck's about to happen to us, right? So they're like that. They got the glasses on that are essentially like blackout glasses because it's going to be the brightness of looking at the sun, and they just don't know what's going to happen. So we see their prep, and then when we finally, you mentioned the silence, and there's that like the silence makes it eerie, and then we have the light, and there's just like the light on
that
everything
comes before the sound even.
right.
Yeah,
Because set light is faster than sound, and it's miles away, right? So like
correct.
it's like when you see lightning and then hear thunder, it makes sense. And you see all these reactions, and the one that like always sticks in my head is, and I don't know if you recognize that, it's one of the Safdie brothers that's just like zinking up on the hood of the car.
Okay.
It's the one that directed The Punching Machine, not the one that directed Marty Supreme.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, like all of those reactions, and then when you get into it, I would argue that like that's one of the downsides later on, is that like we're going to show everything in this relativity relationship direction. I think it works 90% of the way through the movie. I really think it's a great way. It's a great way of not showing us the bomb. It is people's reaction to the shark and not the shark, and that is great.
And our usual topics that we cover in editing is what it got right, what it got wrong. Right. So that's a perfect bridge to what you just mentioned, like showing all the buildup, but not showing the big baddie, the thing that they're all getting ready for. At times, for me, Oppenheimer was so committed to that intensity that it risked bludgeoning rather than deepening what was about to happen. And the practical realism that Nolan was going for to shoot as practically as possible, there was a couple of moments where it can clash a bit with the more impressionable, subjective imagery that we're trying to see on screen, or he's trying to show us. Right. So the size, I'll give you a perfect example. The practical realism of the testing facilities that were at the college campus, we see them as set pieces. We never saw them in use.
Right.
Like that giant piece of testing equipment that was taller than all of them and the size of a compact car. Like we never saw them use that thing, but we all expected that's what it was there for. Right. We just see them set off Trinity in the middle of the desert.
Right.
So there's close-ups that make the performances feel huge. It got that right. But then there were huge build-up set pieces that, maybe due to editing, had their chance to shine,
Mm-hmm.
like a practical demonstration of that testing. And then the most practical demonstration we got of what was going on in the background was the marbles going into the fish bowls
Mm-hmm.
as the production of the pieces of the not chemicals, of the minerals. No, what are those elements? As they're mining those elements to make the bomb in Tennessee, and I think in California it was, they would come up and they would put the marbles into those fish bowls. And like that was the big, like, we knew there's really bad stuff going on, but until Trinity gets tested, it never really looked that dangerous. We know in
Right.
2023 that it's dangerous, but we never really knew how big and dangerous it was. Oh, other practical that I wish we had a little more, because there are times that the pace and density became exhausting.
Oh yeah.
And there, even my wife said, "Well, I'm glad we bought this because I need to watch it again because I know I'm missing
Mm-hmm.
stuff."
Yeah.
Right now, you're a bigger film fan than me, and you've seen more Nolan pictures. Is that a Nolan thing or is that an Oppenheimer thing?
It
Where, like, you can't have a
is.
conversation; you need to be absolutely paying attention to what's on the screen.
Well, yeah, he's not making it for the Netflix. You know, they've talked about. I think at the Oscars the other day they mentioned Conan joked about like the dialogue in movies being written for people washing
The
the
Netflix
dishes.
era, yeah,
Like, yeah, Nolan movies are not that way. Nolan
no,
is not making, and I respect the hell out of. Um, I think that Nolan's there's only a movie or two of Nolan's that I haven't seen multiple times. Well, of the ones I've seen, there's only one or two that I haven't seen multiple times. I think that they all work better upon further viewing.
okay.
Because
So and they ask for that, not just for understanding, but they ask for it because you're entertained the second time through, or just you
sure,
have to watch it again to understand. Begonia, for example, you
right,
might have to watch that twice to understand, but it seems like a chore instead of a joy. Whereas I could
right.
watch Oppenheimer again and it will feel like a joy instead.
Yeah, so Oppenheimer is the outlier to some extent with Nolan films because it is a lot of his movies are twist endings and they're mystery
Okay.
movies. And so like when you watch
Oh,
those, you go back, right? Like to some extent Interstellar, to some extent in Inception, Memento, which is the movie that was his big break. Have you seen Memento?
no. Let me
We
let,
definitely
let me
have.
see the cover.
You
No, I have not.
you would.
No, 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 but I see the cover. I'm not.
Yeah, Memento was his big break movie. Like they're all like some kind of there's some premise in there in a way that you expect to rewatch it, and it's not like Sixth Sense. You know, there is a twist, and you go back and you rewatch it that first time, and you're like, oh yeah, they did sprinkle all throughout this movie, so I see that. And then you're done after the second time. No, I would say that most of the movies are like I've seen The Prestige. That's my favorite of his films. I've seen it 4 or 5 times. It is good every single time. I need to get Logan to watch that one. Um, but like it's such a good movie. Like, but like that's how they they're
So,
built in
so,
such a
so that's
way.
his classic. Is
So
is is you want to watch it again for further understanding to
yeah,
deepen your enjoyment, not
right,
just to see what the heck went on.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
So what for
um,
me, what this movie got right was it felt heavy but not slow heavy.
right,
And it feels like the real decisions made by real people in real places.
yeah.
However, I still think eh, I'll ask you then, do you think that Nolan's restraint made made the film more mature, or did it stop the movie from going as far as it could have and end up being like a Michael Bay film where there's just explosions and what?
Just the idea of Nolan and
Yes,
Michael Bay in the same sentence is
I'm
crazy.
leaning into the meme of Michael Bay movies have explosions.
Yeah.
So like, is this a film for film nerds kind of a take, or is
No,
this my restraint possibly was to its detriment?
I think that this. I don't think this is a film for film nerds. I
Okay.
think it can be. Like, I think film nerds can enjoy it, but I don't think
I
you
mean, we've
have to
been
be a film
talking
nerd to
45
enjoy
minutes
it.
about it.
I think that. So I think that, like what I mentioned before with the like, let's show reactions as a way of kind of giving scale was really, really good, and it was a really good creative way around the like the shark isn't working. We can't figure out an ethical way to do the shark thing, like thing. The one spot where my one downside to the movie, and this was a complaint that was lodged against the movie, without articulating the way I'm going to articulate it. So there was a complaint that at the end of the movie, when they start talking about what would happen if a nuclear war breaks out, and it is exclusively white centric. And we don't need to see the white centric hypothetical when we have the Japanese centric real thing that happened.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think that realistically what Nolan was trying to do is probably not exploit footage of Japanese people suffering
Okay.
from the
Okay.
40s. If I'm giving him credit in that way, I think that's
This film is
probably
distinctly devoid of that. The
right.
Last Emperor showed more of it than this did.
Right, right. And I think that that's me being as generous as I think is. I mean, I think there's a good chance that that's the case. I also think that there is an argument to be made that like he didn't feel he could show certain things, so he would show reactions or hypotheticals, or so like the hypothetical is when everyone's prepping for prepping with the sunscreen, it is their version to like, we've now seen that what the destruction can do. What would it do to America? What would happen if nuclear
Yeah.
attack hits or the hydrogen bombs hit America? And he starts giving those hypotheticals. And I do think that he wasn't trying to erase the Japanese from it, but I think that in effect, it was like, you got to trust your audience. And I think that by showing us the reactions to the test, you trusted us to. We understand what a nuclear. We just understand the mushroom cloud. We understand all the other things. You've gone over a lot of the science of what could what happens or whatever. And you trusted us in that way to do
Yeah.
it. In the second time, you needed to trust us to be able to see the footage or see what it in a way that doesn't make, like there's a lot of times where Americans don't understand anything that unless you like aim at a, like, wait a second, the Holocaust, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, well, what if it happened in America? And you're like, well, that would be white people. That would be America, and people
Yeah.
are, I don't think it needed to be done here. I don't think you needed to say like, well, because I think the people who went to see Oppenheimer are politically aligned with, they're one of a few camps. They are World War II buffs.
Yeah.
They are politically aligned with groups that actually would like recognize Oppenheimer's contribution, both good and bad, to humanity. Like we're not talking about like, I don't know if there are any like atom bomb deniers, but we're not talking about like, there's no reason why we needed to make this like, what if it happened to whites in America? And they did. And I genuinely, I think he probably was just trying not to be exploitative, but in that sense, it becomes this other thing that is, it's all like that. To me, that's the worst part of the movie. And I think that like, but I think that if we're being like honest and
so, okay, why was that decision made? So why do you think that overall
that's what I'm saying.
It was shown to be Nolan chose to make it a little less accurate in screen time portrayal? because
Right.
obviously
Right.
he never tried to act like it didn't affect, but it wasn't given any screen time the same way. So
If
was
I'm
that for
being,
distribution
yeah,
ease? Was that,
no. No, I think if I'm being generous, I think he didn't want to be exploitative. If I'm being less generous, I think that he didn't trust that the audience, especially the American
the
audience,
white American audience? Yeah.
would give a shit. And I think that that's not true.
Fair.
Like, I think we all, like, I think if you showed, I mean, maybe not to the extent, but like, I think that it's somewhere in between there. And it could be a little bit of both, right? It could be like, oh, this will hit harder if we show how it could affect America.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Or, so
Fair.
I
Okay.
don't know. I don't want to be like too cynical on him in that way, because I think that there is it just was a miscalculation in that
Yep.
sense, and
Okay.
but it kind of does fit so many of the other things where it's like reactions. We're seeing things in reflection rather than
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
so
no, good point. Almost all of the testing of Trinity in the last third of the film, it's such a buildup of them preparing, doing the radio transmitting, setting off the flares, putting on the sunscreen, facing away, getting behind the bunker, laying belly down prone so they don't face. Like, yeah, there's so much of this prep for what maybe lasted 90 seconds.
right,
Like total from ignition to final sound and light like blast.
right,
So for me, Oppenheimer is less an explosion movie and more of a room pressure movie.
yeah,
So there are so many moments where Murphy and the other characters, I like how Murphy and Emily Blunt and definitely Matt Damon and Downey Jr. They all made so much pressure. And what I did like is it slowly built the whole film. Like there wasn't a lot at stake
right,
until those fish bowls started to fill up with the marbles. There wasn't a lot at stake till he said, "Build him a city." Like he just
yeah,
looks at he looks at the CO looks at the private and says, "Build him a city." So there's so many of those. Like it just built and built and built, and there was a perfect crescendo of just concern and fear and unknown, and then they set Trinity off.
right,
So the film is not worshiping science as nearly as much as it's documenting the cost of turning genius into state power, which is essentially what happened. The individuals that are politically empowered just bent the will of Oppenheimer to use this for much more than he ever wanted to. Ergo, his conversations with Albert Einstein.
right,
And what I really think is how should I say this? Uh, I really think Trinity will be remembered as iconic restraint, not like a silly overrated scene. And
right,
and I say that because here, as Americans, which most of our audience is, we can go visit Los Alamos. Like it is a state park. You can
hmm
go see it. It's not something that the U.S. is hiding,
right,
despite it was a very big deal and a very big achievement in military ordnance, like dominant forces in the grand military theater, worldwide military theater. It's it's something that Americans seem to be prideful of, and we tend to be as a country, we tend to be very proud of our military power. Especially depending on what president is in office at the time, it is a very big focus. Is
sometimes even for their birthdays we
sovereignty
have
and
military
safety.
parades.
Sometimes even for their birthday, we have parades. So Nolan deepening his film with the practical craft was never him trying to hide the prestige of what really happened, but like you said, also not using screen time to aggrandize just the American side of it, but also not exploit the sufferers, which were the Japanese in this case.
Yeah, so obviously we know my hot take. I also think that like there, I think to your point about the in the room kind of thing, I did think that that makes it work in a lot of ways because it presents the. I mean, Oppenheimer is remembered, and nuclear and atomic, the atomic bomb, the atomic weapon
Just
is
atomic warfare in general. Yeah.
in World War II specifically is remembered
Mm-hmm.
for all of the historical stuff, but it's also such a huge philosophical thing. You know,
Yeah.
we're 80-ish years since I think we're 81 years out from the dropping of the bombs in
Mm-hmm.
Japan. And people still debate whether or not it was necessary. Now, most people,
Yeah.
I think, are on the side of like it wasn't necessary. I think that if you, but
Oppenheimer was on the side if it
Op-
wasn't necessary.
Oppenheimer was on the side of like, do we need to use the weapon if we have the weapon? We
Like,
can,
how about the threat of it should be enough?
right, and we
Like he
can,
never said that line straight, but how about the threat of us
right.
having it is enough?
And it balanced enough of the philosophical, and it balanced the philosophy of like, do we do it or should we do it or should we not do it, as
Yeah.
well as the like. As soon as he learned that they weren't going to listen, that they were going to use it because they had it, he was like, "All right, then we stop." Like once it was used,
He kind of held it hostage,
he
or he
well,
tried
but
to.
but going into like, okay, now how do we make a super atomic? Isn't that what they call it? Super atomic bombs
Yeah,
with
or
the
something like that.
hydrogen bombs, and he's like, "Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, I think that we need to make sure this doesn't happen." And you get the like you get the part of like the Matt Damon representing the military interest, and you get Robert Downey Jr. representing that like political side, which is a couple things. It's the like I want the political power, and B, I want the ego.
Yeah.
Like Matt Damon's side is a little more honest and earnest in it. Like he is a little
It
more
is.
like is he ruthless in a lot of ways, but is he but he's not like it's not a matter of like someone insulted his dick size the way it is with Robert Downey Jr.'s
Yeah.
character. And
Yeah.
so like and it's not like well, I want, I want to be in the room where it happens. I want to be the guy who makes, I've been insulted. I want to, keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, and really, speaking of characters, something that I was keenly unaware of is how natural human Oppenheimer was,
Yep.
and most often in my in the circles that I've been a part of or my family has, highly intellectual people are often pretty socially boring.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to not be very exciting. They tend to be pretty square as far as what they're into. Like to them, a fun night is one drink and going to bed
Right.
while at home. Whereas Oppenheimer being a womanizer, being being a bit of a miscreant, like that added this human element to the genius that he truly had that I
Yeah.
was completely unaware of. Because although I love history, I don't know that much about this part of American history
Yeah.
because I focus a lot more on European and world history in my general interest. So for me, seeing Robert Downey Jr. as this like human flaw, but then Oppenheimer was too. He's smart as
Yeah.
hell, but he's also like an average dude with average dude desires and needs and
Mm-hmm.
average person energy. He wants a family with kids and he
Yeah.
wants to be able to call her and say, "Honey, take in the laundry."
He's also a
You
good,
know?
yeah, he's also a good metaphor for what I think a lot of Americans are in the sense, or a lot of people probably are in the sense of like, we want our cake and we want to eat it too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
in because he
Like not
is
being satisfied with already having the power, but wanting to
right.
wield it as well. Yeah.
Right. And then but also then wanting the deniability of like, well,
Ah.
like why did you need to do that? Well,
So
I
they
was
want to
doing
throw
it
the
for
rock and hide
science.
their
Yeah.
yeah, they want to throw the rock but hide their hand.
Yeah, and I think the movie did a good job of kind of depicting like, because there was moments where I think he was seeing that like, oh, they're going to use this and I could stop this if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really
yeah.
wanted to. I could stop it this time, and it didn't really hit him until after the dropping in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then he kind of goes, okay, no, I'm done. But like, he had the opportunity
Once it had
earlier than
real
that.
impact, yeah, once it had real impact, he recanted and was not so keen on it. But Oppenheimer had moments where he could have sandbagged like hell. But
Yeah,
I believe, again, this is the human part of it. I believe he was so much enjoying the lifestyle
yeah,
and the
and
power
the
and the
ego. Yeah,
influence and the ego that he had, that he can kind of sit, like you said, the deniability. He can kind of sit idle by and say, well, I mean, we haven't dropped it yet. We just know it'll decimate
yeah,
a 30
and there,
mile radius. So what? Oh,
yeah,
wait, it happened.
and there
Oh, well,
is there.
now I have a problem with it.
And at the beginning of the project, there is a good reason for him to want to be,
Yeah,
they're all like, we're Jewish and look what they're doing to our people
I
over there. And they
know.
are working on building one of these in Germany. We need to have it in case Germany gets it. That is a legitimate line of thinking for
Yeah,
me. Then to use it on Japan, like, and when you know that like, oh, like once Germany's out, in the movie, when Germany's out and he's kind of like, all right, then we're good, right? And then they're like, no,
and
we're gonna still keep moving forward on this. And he's like, okay.
yeah,
He doesn't really push back enough at that point. Like, I think that there is, because I mean, again, I am not. We've mentioned this several times now between uh, the Last Emperor and a few other things. I'm not as familiar with the Japanese front of the war as I am with
yeah,
the
I'm not
German
either.
front.
Yeah,
So I don't know, but I have never gotten the feeling that we were like in the same fear that Japan was going to take over the world that we were with Germany.
yeah, yeah.
And
No, agreed.
like I don't think we were in that fear with Italy either. I think because I don't think that the Holocaust, as much as it would be nice to think that we got in there, we got involved in the war to prevent the Holocaust, to stop, I think it was more about like making sure that we stop it before it gets to us. And,
Yeah.
especially with the U.S. not getting in till Pearl Harbor, right? Like, do you recommend this movie?
Yes, I recommend this film. My ratings will show it. And uh it I wonder what this month's gonna look like after Birdman. Burn.
Yeah.
Birdman.
Oh yeah, I gotta shoehorn Birdman into this list too. Um, yeah, I'm excited to talk about Birdman too. So I recommend this movie. I think it's a good movie. I think I'm trying to think. I know that it beat Barbie, it beat Poor Things. I don't remember if I don't think that I can't remember if I thought this was my favorite movie of the year. That it was not my favorite movie of the year, but my favorite of the Oscar nominated movies.
This would have been the 2024 Academy Awards.
Yeah.
All right, so 96th annual
Oh, American
um
Fiction.
American Fiction. Okay.
Okay. I will say that like American Fiction's a more fun movie than this. Uh,
Oh, yeah. No,
this
100%.
was this was a pretty good year. I
So
liked
it beat
Killers of the
out
Flower Moon,
yeah, it beat out what?
Holdovers, American Fiction, Zone of
Anatomy of a
Interest,
Fall,
Barbie, Poor
Maestro.
Things, Maestro, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Past Lives. So of those movies, I saw Oppenheimer, Barbie, American Fiction. I saw last month, The Holdovers, and Killers of the Flower Moon. I saw part of Poor Things. I didn't see the whole thing. Of those 10, I see why it won. I have no objections to it winning of
I can
those
agree.
10.
Yeah.
Um, I really liked Killers of the Flower Moon more than the average person did, I think. And then
They
now having
were Killers was also cinematography nominee that year, and Oppenheimer
yeah,
beat it there too.
yeah. having watched American Fiction recently, I really liked American Fiction. I would say
Mhm.
that's, like I said, that's probably more of a fun movie than this. I think that unfortunately, like so far, American Fiction has not been remembered that much. Which
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it could, we could get 5 to 10 years down the road and it has a resurgence or whatever. It's hard to tell where something's place will be this close to it. But yeah, so I liked it. Let's get into ratings. You want to go first or second?
No, I'll go first. So for me, I'm going to give fun and watchability a 7, and it's a 7, not an 8, the way Titanic was, because I as a more casual film person don't quite understand how much technical work. Sorry, that's for quality more. I this is a 7 and not an 8 for fun and watchability because it was so dense, it was
Mhm.
so big, it had so much going on that it needs a rewatch, I think, to fully enjoy it. And to me, the way a story is told, the best film ever, I'm going to watch it once, still be amazed, still love it, but not have to watch it again.
Right.
So that to me is an amazing film. It doesn't mean it's a good film, it's a good film objectively. It means that for
Yeah.
me, that's what ideally gets a 10. I open, I watch, I'm done, I love it. Tick Tick Boom was a 9. Perfect example of that for me. I'm Up at Christmas Carol that will not be dethroned. Perfect example of a 9 of great fun and watchability. And for
Yeah.
quality, I gave it a 9. I'm getting more aware of how of how shooting practically makes a big difference, and I'm becoming more aware on how a quality of a film can be greatly affected by early stage work,
Yeah.
meaning shooting and blocking and set design, and less about the editing and the color correction and the technical and the VFX that's on the back end, that's on cutting room. So
Yeah.
other 9s for me are A Special Day, Partenope, and A Muppet Christmas Carol. That's another 9 for me. And then
Will not be
Exorcist,
will not be dethroned.
that will not be dethroned. And The Exorcist is another quality 9 for me.
Yeah.
So it's not a perfect 10. Why is it not Lawrence of Arabia? It's for the reason it's not Lawrence of Arabia. I know how much work that took.
Right.
I know how hard A Special Day was to film, and that got quality 10s for me.
So yeah, so I gave it the same scores. Let me explain my two scores. So 7 for watchability. Ultimately comes down to that last bit. I
Okay.
think that it does a really like good job. Like there's no like I've mentioned in the past I don't have a problem with long movies. That doesn't bother me. You're right about the density. It is very dense, which makes it more rewatchable to me. That
True. Yeah.
that part at the end where they're doing the hypothetical of what would happen if it happened to America takes me out of it because it seems so, everything else relates properly. And if they had done Japan, or they've been like, this is what happened, or whatever, I'd have been like,
Yeah. Okay.
but there was a moment of like, well, it's, it's not like Begonia kind of, but like it is like a different tone when we're seeing all throughout the movie. Like they're trying to apply the same lens filter kind of thing, like story wise, but it doesn't go there. So it's kind of like, there's that picture of three kids watching a baseball from behind a fence, and one's short and can't see over the fence, and then they've got like the three kids now standing on the soapboxes, so they're all elevated above it, and like the tall one's way taller, and then the short one's still barely able to see over it or whatever.
Equity and equality are not the same
Right.
thing.
And so when you're talking about equity and equality in this movie and how they present things from the reflection, it works in every other spot for a good reason. It does not work in this spot, and it took me out. It felt very jarringly different than the rest of this movie, especially
Yeah.
when we
Okay.
see somebody like Oppenheimer who is like who is so ambiguous to then just be like, all right,
Yeah.
we're not going to talk about the Japanese people. Because even though like I think that he was morally ambiguous, he uses the language of moral righteousness, and he uses, throughout, and that isn't the language of moral righteousness. That is the language of moral pleading and moral, like being like, please, and it just doesn't work in comparison to everything else. And I don't get the feeling that he did it because he learned his lesson, that's how it had to be done. I get the feeling it's like Christopher Nolan wanted us as an audience to
Yeah.
be, like.
Well, and he is British. So he even has a different understanding
Sure.
and
Well, he's
sensitivity to
half
this than
British.
we do. Still, he's more British than you and me. So
Yeah, but
so
he grew
so
up. He spent half his childhood here, half his childhood there.
yeah,
So he
he
understands
still has a
Americans.
different
Is what I'm saying.
he does,
Yeah,
but he still has a different one than maybe many of his American
sure,
audience did.
sure. All right. And then should we go into trailer?
So you defend your quality?
I did not defend my quality. 9. It's. I mean, there. It's. I think the visuals. Again. I will take that what I just said about that scene, making it less watchable. I don't think it is. It's not a poor quality thing. That is more just like it pulled me out of it. But the visuals
Yeah.
are the visuals, the way that everything is represented, story beat wise, like, and all the other ways it
Those hit the
works.
way Nolan wanted them to for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
agreed.
All right. Next week we're wrapping up for real this time. March, our Best Picture, Best Cinematography month, and we're going to be watching Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, and which might be the longest Best Picture winner title in
Yeah.
history. I think it might be. And this was a first time watch for me, the first of the month. So like, I've, spoiler alert, as of the moment we're recording this, I've already watched it, so I already know. But like, prior to last night, I had not watched it. Yeah, and that's going to be the next week, and then we go into Westerns month. We have 2 guests lined up for the end of the month. And I don't think we're gonna have any guests for the beginning half, but yeah, I'm excited to get into Westerns. And I know that you are not a historically Western kind of guy, so
Never watched them as a kid. Yeah,
hopefully I picked some interesting stuff for you. We will see.
we will see.
Yeah, I've only seen one of next month's, and yeah. So, all right.
I've seen 0, and Westerns are new for me, not only in the film method, but also in like the episodic TV kind of way. I didn't have that boomer generation family that watched Westerns. You did. So for you, it's going to be thematic rehash. For me, it's going to be complete green walking into this.
Yeah.
So join us for Birdman next week, audience. And please don't have any unexpected virtues on our account.
And if you like this episode or you like this show, please hit like and subscribe. Give us a comment. Tell us which of the Best Picture, Best Cinematography winners you liked the best. Tell us if we're wrong about the ending of Oppenheimer. Tell me if we've already announced the Westerns, or actually, I don't know that we announced it. I think I might have snipped that just in case we changed them. But the Westerns, tell us if you have anything that you want us to visit on those. If you want to get these episodes early, I'm putting, especially like we're doing some get ahead episodes. So like when we do those, you can access 2-3 weeks out sometimes early. If you want to do that, it's $26 for the year to get our season pass. I have that linked below in the show notes. Like I said, $26 for the year, and there's at least 52 episodes, but as of right now, there's at least 53 episodes because we've done 1 bonus episode so far. We are pretty sure we'll be doing more bonus episodes throughout the year. Yeah, so please feel free to go over and check that out. You don't even have to, you can just go check it out. Yeah. And that's it. Oh, and if you want to get like thanked in the show notes at the end of this episode, that's you could become a patron, and we'll throw your name up in the patrons category. All right,
We're happy to have
and
it. Even if you follow us for free, we're happy to have the engagement. You will see many different things on our different social media accounts, whether it be Instagram, YouTube. Please visit them, give us some interaction, and give us an idea of which Western you like
yeah,
next on Cinemen.
or what kind of categories you want us to cover in the months to come. You know, not that has to be genre. It could be, you know, we did an Italian movies month. We've done a lot of different things. So if you have an idea for that you want to see us do, let us know. We want to hear from you.